Hey everybody, what is going on? My name is Anthony and this is the VR Game Rankings YouTube channel. You guys are watching what I like to call the weekend wrap-up. So what exactly is the weekend wrap-up? We take the biggest VR gaming news stories of the week. I cherry pick a handful that I think are a little bit more exciting and more interesting. Maybe we have a little bit of VR game impressions. We might have some announcements for some upcoming VR games. There's a lot of good stuff to get into, so we have no shortage of interesting stuff to get into on this particular show. So let's go ahead and get it all rolling. Now we're going to start things off in the world of Sony and in the PlayStation VR world. Now you might say, well, there really isn't any major PlayStation VR news out there, but I'll tell you what, there is some major news, because if you are a fan of the PlayStation VR, you're probably wondering, when might we get a PlayStation VR2? Well, that is really where the news is centered, because Sony has recently had an investors meeting where they've been talking about some different topics that are starting to send shockwaves throughout the major VR gaming, well, the gaming industry in general, really, not the VR gaming industry, but just the regular gaming industry in general. So it's kind of confusing here, because the first message that seemed to be coming out of Sony was that the PlayStation 4 era is starting to wind down, that we're starting to reach the end of days, basically, for PlayStation 4, that it's entering its final phase. Maybe we're in the last 3 years or so of PlayStation 4, it's starting to wind down. Well, you kind of hear this kind of information, and of course, like anybody, you would immediately assume, oh, this means PlayStation 5 might be a little bit earlier than any of us thought it would be. Or, PlayStation 5 has to be coming relatively soon, right? If PS4 is starting to wind down, then the follow-up console has to be right around the corner. But then Sony comes out and says, well, don't expect a new console from us until 2021. Now, is that really what they said? Or is that what a lot of internet pontificators interpreted from their comments and decided that we're not going to get a PlayStation 5 until 2021? So it's all rather confusing, but you know what? Let's get to the real meat of the matter here. And so one of the things that I'll mention, first of all, is when you think about the arrival of major home gaming consoles, for example, let's just go back to the arrival of PlayStation 4. This was in November of 2013. Now, when PlayStation 4 arrived in November of 2013, it wasn't like Sony took the PlayStation 3 out into the backyard, pulled out a shotgun, and put it out of its misery. It wasn't exactly like that. Plenty of games came out for the Sony PlayStation 3 in the year 2014. PlayStation 3 wasn't completely done. So the thing that we have to remember here is you don't have to wait until a console is completely dead and buried before you bring out the follow-up console. And in fact, that would be a really bad idea, because Sony knows when they come out with the PlayStation 5, it's going to be at least $399.99 right off the bat. It could even be $499.99 right off the bat. And a lot of people aren't going to jump on an expensive console like that. They're going to hold on to their PlayStation 4. You're probably going to be able to pick up brand new PlayStation 4s for $199 at this time. So it's like PlayStation 4 is not going to die right away. So typically what you have happen is the new console comes in and your most hardcore early adopters jump on that initially, but the mass market doesn't really jump on that right away. And that's typically how the process works. And then when the brand new console has been out for a couple of years and maybe it's seen its first major price drop, that's when more of the mass market consumers start to come aboard and start to use that console. So I think it's a real mistake some of the headlines that we're seeing around the internet that's saying we're not going to get a PlayStation 5 until 2021. I'm going to tell you right here and right now, that is simply not going to happen. In fact, there is no chance whatsoever that that is going to happen. The latest we're going to get a PlayStation 5, and you can bank on this, is November 2020. Okay, that is the latest we're going to get a PlayStation 5. And the reason I say this is all of these outlets that are talking about 2021, do you realize when consoles are typically released? If you go back throughout history and you look at when major home video game consoles are released, I'm talking about the PlayStation 4, I'm talking about the Xbox One, I'm talking PlayStation 3, I'm talking Xbox 360, I'm talking PlayStation 2, I'm talking the original Xbox, I'm talking the Nintendo Wii U, I'm talking the Nintendo Wii. Look at when all of these consoles came out, and you're going to notice a pattern. They all came out in November, with the exception of PlayStation 2 that came out in the last couple of days of October. That is when new consoles come out. So you're going to tell me, you're seriously going to sit there and tell me that we're not going to get a PlayStation 5 until November of 2021? Get the hell out of Dodge. That is not going to happen. We're not waiting that long, and we're not going to get a spring console either. That's the other thing that people, oh yeah, the PS5 is going to come out in the spring, even though no PlayStation ever in the history has ever come out in the spring. We're going to get the PS5 in the spring. No, that is not going to happen. So first of all, I want to calm the fears of people out there that think you're going to have to wait forever and a day for PlayStation 5 and thus PSVR 2. You're not going to have to wait that long. We're talking November 2020 at the latest. Now, some people have tweeted out to me and they said, hey, Anthony, you had this prediction for a number of years now. You keep saying November 2019, PlayStation 5 and PlayStation VR 2, that they both arrive day and date. They're both available. It's a marriage made in heaven. PlayStation 5 and PSVR 2, a beautiful combination together, both coming November of 2019. And so if you look at this new information that Sony has dropped, you must be wrong, Anthony. It's time to serve your plate of crow. You're completely off the mark. Well, you know what? Nostradamus Jr. does not make mistakes. No, okay, I'm kidding there, but you know what? Honestly, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not moving away from November 2019 quite yet. And the reason why I'm not moving away from November 2019 is because I know you typically have this overlap. The new console comes in at a very high price. Only the early adopters jump on it. And so there's going to be an overlap. PS5 and PS4 are going to coexist for a couple of years. And I think November 2019 is a real possibility. Now, I'll hedge my bets a little bit here and I'll say, you know what? I can concede the possibility that I could be 1 year early, and we could be looking at November 2020, but November 2021, get the hell out of Dodge. That is not going to happen. You heard it here first. Do not worry about that. We will get PSVR 2 a hell of a lot earlier than November of 2021. So I am not at all concerned about that. Okay, now some other news that we have to talk about in the headset game, and we're talking about new headsets here when we're talking about PSVR 2, is it is display week in Los Angeles, and you have LG and Google showing off their new display technology. You've got Samsung showing off their new display technology. And of course, you have JDI, which Sony is a very big part of. You have them showing off their display technology as well. So we got a lot of exciting stuff that is going on at Display Week. We've got these really high PPI displays. Screen door is finally being put in its place, or is it? That is kind of the question that we're asking here. And Upload VR, let's see, Ian Ian Hamilton from Upload VR, he is actually at Display Week, and he has taken some footage with his iPhone showing both the Samsung display and the JDI display. Basically, these displays are locked down. You can kind of stick your head up it and take a look in it. And what he's done, he's taken his iPhone and he's gotten real close, looked at it, zoomed out, and he's done this with both the Samsung display, which I believe has a 1200 ppi, and then with the JDI display, which is 1001. Now, what was Ian's comments in relation to these two displays? Well, the one thing he said is the Samsung display has a static image on the screen. It is not a moving image. And he did still notice some screen door effect. Even though it was greatly minimized, screen door was still very much visible. Now, the good news is the JDI display, he noticed no screen door whatsoever, and he said it was absolutely beautiful. Now, the difference here, though, the JDI is showing a moving display, so it probably would be a bit more difficult to notice the screen door effect when you got moving images compared to a static image. So we still don't really know exactly how these two things are going to shake out. But speaking of JDI and going back to the previous story with Sony, once again, JDI, a very huge part of JDI is Sony. You've got Hitachi and Toshiba. Those companies aren't doing a hell of a lot. Sony is the company that is really holding JDI together, and you don't think that this display is being handcrafted for their next baby in the family? I'm talking about PSVR2. I really believe that this display is being handcrafted for their own primary headset. Sure, they're going to be selling it to a bunch of other manufacturers as well. The more the merrier, but definitely this is being designed for PSVR2 in my personal opinion. And why would JDI be showing off a display that is likely for PlayStation VR2 3 years ahead of time? Does that make any sense? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. That is why I'm kind of sticking to my November 2019 prediction when it comes to PSVR2 and PS5. I'm still sticking with it because it doesn't make sense to me that JDI would show this 1001 ppi display so many years in advance before a headset would use it. Doesn't make sense. Now, would they show it 18 months in advance? Sure, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And what's 18 months from now? November 2019 is kind of in that range. So I really believe there's a possibility here. Now, what about LG and Google? We saw some images from LG and Google as well. They have their 18.1 megapixel display. Again, extremely high PPI. Now, originally, Google was talking about this wide field of view, but the specifications that have been released, it's not like it's a half dome prototype or something like that. So I don't know what happened to the whole wide field of view thing, because they kind of backed away from that in terms of the field of view that this display is going to use. But basically, we've got all these different technologies. They're being shown off at Display Week, and we're going to have to see how all of this shakes out. When are these displays going to find themselves in actual VR headsets that we can potentially purchase? Obviously, it's not happening in 2018, but there could be some headsets that will be arriving in 2019 that could feature these displays, and we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes out on that. Okay, now one of the topics I wanted to get into after we get out of all this hardware related news is, what about software announcements? And oh my goodness, we got a prime time software announcement, and this is coming from Sony. E3 is really close, so a lot of media outlets are being granted some early access to a lot of stuff that is going to be shown off at E3, and we have found out about Astro Rescue Mission. And so what exactly is Astro Rescue Mission, and why am I so freaking excited about this? Well, anybody that has owned a PlayStation VR, you guys know that there is a free experience called the Playroom VR. And in the Playroom VR, they have a portion of that is called Robots Rescue, and it features this cute, adorable little robot that you're guiding through a world. It's basically a 3D platformer, probably one of the most awesome 3D platformers that we've seen in VR, period. And this goes back to 2016. That's when this came out, October of 2016. It's been available for a long time, and I still don't think we have a 3D platformer that has actually been better than what we got in Robots Rescue. Now, the problem with Robots Rescue is you can blow through this little demo in 10 to 13 minutes. It's basically just a sampler. And ever since October 2016, when all of us first tried this, we have been pleading, we've been begging Sony, please give us a full-blown experience that is based off Robots Rescue. You've got the game engine here. This game engine works beautiful. Now just give us like 50 different levels, give us a bunch of different worlds. Give us an ice world, a fire world, a water tropical world, a sand world, the typical way we do this with Mario style games. Give us all kinds of different worlds, all kinds of different levels. That is exactly what we need. We need a full-blown game of Robots Rescue. We've been crying about this for 2 years, and our prayers have been answered. Astrobot Rescue Mission is exactly what the doctor ordered. Now, we don't have a release date for this game, but you got to imagine it's being shown off at E3. This is probably a fall 2018 title, and I got to tell you, folks, I'm super jazzed about this game because I am one of those people that really went out on a limb when it comes to Robots Rescue. And the reason why that game is so awesome, and I think it's underrated to this day, you have brand new PlayStation VR owners that don't even know about Robots Rescue. Such a damn shame that it's kind of underrated and people don't know a lot about it. But one of the amazing things about Robots Rescue is the controller that you're holding. It's in the game. It is really in the game. And so what that does is that brings you as the player into the game as well. So you got your cute, cuddly little platform character that's running around, but you have your controller in the game, and you have to use your controller to help out your little buddy, your cute, adorable buddy that is running all around the place. And we've seen this used to some degree in Moss. Polyarc obviously was paying close attention. They played the Playroom VR. They played Robots Rescue. They saw what Japan Studio was doing, and they took some of that idea and concept and they put it into Moss, and it worked great. Interacting with a little cute, cuddly character is a great idea, and putting the real player in the game as well, where the human player assists this little adorable character, it works great. But Japan Studio, as well as Polyarc did with Moss, I think Japan Studio was even better with it. Japan Studio, incredibly talented developer here, and now we're getting a full-blown breakout game with Astrobot Rescue Mission. This absolutely jumps really high up the charts in terms of my absolutely most wanted games of 2018. Absolutely looking forward to this. Okay, now I wanted to get into a little bit of game impression, game discussion here, and I want to talk about The Forest because that came out this week, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for the arrival of The Forest, because when it first arrived, everybody that jumped in there and started playing it right away, the early reviews, the early impressions were really, really bad. Everybody was saying it was broken. It's not, this isn't working. That isn't working. Oh my God, it's so pixelated. It looks like garbage. It was all bad. Everybody was saying some really, really bad things about The Forest. And so in the beginning, I was like, man, do I even want to get this game after hearing all these really negative reviews? But I thought, you know what? It's $20. This is a primetime game that a lot of people are very excited about. You know what? I'm going to throw the $20 at it. And if it is absolute garbage, well, I could play it for an hour and I could just back out of it and then try to get a refund. So that's kind of what I decided to do. And I didn't play it that first day. I actually waited until the next day. So I get into The Forest VR the next day. I think there has been a patch at this point, and I knew to back out of the Steam VR beta. I knew that it wasn't really compatible with Steam VR beta, so I went ahead and disabled that, opted out of the Steam VR beta. I went into the forest. I was expecting it to be a shit show. I was expecting it to be a complete and utter disaster based on all the comments that I've heard, and also based on the fact, hey, I'm rocking a 970, guys. I remember when I first heard about the forest and I saw the trailer, we talked about this on VR Roundtable. I was talking with Steve and Gary, and I was like, you guys are probably going to be able to really enjoy this game with your 1080 Ti's. I've got a 970. This game looks like it will absolutely murder a 970. Yet here I was playing the forest. I think this was on Wednesday, and I was pretty amazed. I was pretty amazed by the experience that I had with the forest, and I am pleasantly surprised by the forest. Now, I will say that I still to this day, I am struggling with the controls for the game. The controls are not incredibly intuitive, and there is a little bit of that fumbling with the controls. I'm not sure what I'm doing all of the time. For a number of days there, the first couple of times I had played the forest, you know how you start off with this axe in your hand? Well, at a certain point, you're picking up sticks or rocks or other stuff, and I couldn't figure out how the hell do I get back my axe? And so you get into this game and you get attacked by these wild psycho zombie natives that are like, it's almost like the movie or the TV show Lost. The forest is very much like Lost, actually. And if you're a big fan of Lost, you're probably really going to like the forest. And I was a huge fan of Lost. I watched although the ending of Lost, let's admit, the ending of Lost was pretty freaking lame. But I was a pretty big fan of Lost. And that's what the forest is. The forest is basically Lost. You're on a plane, it crashes on an island, virtually everybody's dead, you don't know what's going on, you're on this mysterious unknown island, and you have to survive. You have to eat food, you have to build shelter. This is a survival game. So as soon as you land on this island, you have a watch that's on your wrist, and it shows you your current health status, whether you need food and kind of what your health situation is. And you're inside this plane that has split open, and so you're kind of walking down the aisle. There's some food there, there's some water there, so you grab that, you grub on the food, you get your health up to full, you get this axe that was stuck in in one of the stewardesses' back. There's an axe that's stuck in her. You grab the axe, now you got a weapon to work with, and so now you're just in the forest and you're exploring. Now, is it pixelated? Is it chunky? Hell yes, this is Drive Club VR, the game, baby. I mean, it is pixelated, it is chunky, there is a lot of Vaseline that is smeared all over the screen, but you know what? It's running on my 970, so I'm not really going to complain about it. And the other thing I've heard is, if you really do have that high-end rig like Gary and Steve, if you do got that 1080 Ti, you can go into the options, you can change some of the settings, you can make it look quite a bit better than it is right off the bat. But I'm okay with Pixel City. I'm okay with it because the game is running well, I'm able to play it, and it's working good. And I'm really liking this game. I'm liking the vibe of it. The whole idea of having to build a small little shelter and having to start up a fire and having to catch rabbits, and I kind of like the whole concept. I remember playing I think there was a game called Don't Starve, and early on in the when I first got my PlayStation 4, like very early in my life, in the lifespan of the PlayStation 4, there was a downloadable game called Don't Starve that I played on my PlayStation 4. And it was kind of that same kind of thing. Like, you got to build a shelter, you got to get food, you got to survive that first night. Just surviving that first night is a major deal. And that's very much how the forest is. And you've got all these unknown weird zombie things. I got into a cave. It starts to get really scary too. That's the other thing. The forest is almost like a pseudo horror game as well. You get into these underground caverns and you have no idea what you're going to come across, and it's going to be startling. There's already some people out there that are saying, I can't play this game. It's a little bit too freaky for me to deal with. But I'm definitely enjoying the forest, still struggling with the controls to some degree, but I'm having a great time. And honestly, for 20 bucks, if you have any interest in a survival type game like this, where you're just in an open place, you got to figure out what you're going to do, you got to find food, shelter, and you got to try to survive. And I haven't even gotten started to the whole multiplayer thing. There's actually going to be multiplayer and all of that as well. So I'm really enjoying what the forest has on offer. I do understand it has issues. It does have issues, and I'm not going to give it a complete pass because the controls are hard to deal with. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Red Matter. So the last time I talked about Red Matter, we were limited in what we could discuss. We could only discuss the very opening level of the game. And basically everything I said back then, it still holds true now. And so my follow-up thoughts on Red Matter is I just have a couple of things to say about. First of all, graphics. The graphics of this game drop dead gorgeous. I mean, the graphics are just really beautiful. Everything is very crisp. Everything is very clean, and one of the things that I'll relate to Red Matter is if you guys have played First Contact, when you're first setting up your Oculus Rift and you get into the experience First Contact and you have that robot, and kind of how that rendering engine looks in the First Contact, something about the lighting, something about how they do everything, it just looks really good. Everything looks very clean and crisp. And that's very much how Red Matter looks. Graphics are absolutely outstanding. I have nothing but great things to say about the graphics. The sound design is good as well. There's very good sound here. If you are a fan of sci-fi, if you kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, if you like all different kinds of sci-fi movies, Event Horizon, stuff like the Sphere. I'm trying to think of Solaris, all kinds of different sci-fi movies. It kind of has a lot of that to it with the music and stuff. It's kind of creepy. It's very mysterious. It's a detective game. Now, the one downside that you're going to get into in regards to Red Matter is if you want that action, if you want zombies, if you want a gun and you want to be blasting things, I haven't seen none of that. Now, I've already talked about that, of course, but that isn't really what Red Matter is. Red Matter is more of an exploratory game. You're solving puzzles. It's very similar to The Gallery, episodes 1 and 2. It's similar to Abduction. It's more of a game for people that like to explore every little nook and cranny. They like to smell the flowers. They like to take their time. That's the kind of game that Red Matter is. Now, I did want to get into some criticism of this game. I love the game. I recommend it. Even at its price, I recommend it. I think this game is up there with you think about all the exclusives that have come to Oculus, like Brass Tactics, Lone Echo, Robo Recall, The Mage's Tale, Killing Floor Incursion. A lot of Wilson's Heart, a lot of really solid games. And honestly, I put Red Matter in there with all of those other games. That is great company to be with. That is incredible company to be involved with. And I put Red Matter with all of them. But what I'll say on the negative side of Red Matter, here is where I'll go if I wanted to be super negative about the game, if I want to be reductive about the game or dismissive. One of the things that I would say is basically all you're doing is you're going from room to room. You get to a new room. You're kind of locked in this new room and you need to figure out what you got to do to go to the next room. And so that's kind of basically the gameplay loop that you keep going through in Red Matter. Now, the good news is each of these rooms are interesting. They look good. The sound is good. The puzzles are enjoyable. So it's not that bad. But if somebody wanted to reduce it to that, yeah, you could say all you're doing is going from one room to another, solving some pretty easy puzzles to deal with if you take your time and you solve it, and that's all you're really doing. And so somebody could say that, and you know what, they're not lying. That's true. And the other negative I'll say also is I feel like I gotta be in the right mood to play Red Matter. There's a number of VR games where you don't have to be in a mood to play them. For example, Beat Saber. You could play Beat Saber at any time and you can get about 25 minutes worth of fun real quick. I could hop into In Death and get 25 minutes of fun real quick. I don't need to be in a certain mood to play in depth. There's a lot of VR games I can just hop in and have a lot of fun right away. But I kind of think of Lone Echo and Wilson's Heart and Red Matter in the same kind of way, where all those games are good, but if I'm not in the mood to really play it, I don't really want to play it. And so that might be a little bit of a downside when I'm thinking about Red Matter, because there's been a couple of times where I thought, should I play Red Matter? And then I was like, nah, I'm not really in the mood for that, because you really got to put about an hour into it to get anywhere. And, it is a slow game. You are going to be taking your time and you're going to be solving these puzzles. And it's the kind of game that doesn't have a ton of checkpointing. So you want to give yourself like an hour and 15 minutes if you're going to play Red Matter. If you only have 25 minutes, you probably don't want to play Red Matter. So that would be one of the downsides. And then this like room to room thing would be another downside. But I'm really liking Red Matter. This game kind of came out of nowhere. This game caught me off guard. I was not expecting such a high quality, polished, well done title. Much loved a Vertical Robot. Never ever heard of Vertical Robot. But these guys are legit. Now I am very curious as to like anything they come out with in the future. I'm interested. I'm excited. Very impressed with what Vertical Robot has delivered so far. Okay, so we've been running super long here. I just wanted to mention two really quick things about a couple of games that are already existing, but some new information that has popped up about them. Paper Valley is coming to Steam. This was an Oculus exclusive. I've talked about Paper Valley. At $20, I honestly thought it was maybe a little bit expensive, like maybe $5 to $10 overpriced. I kind of thought it's a very chill game. It's an enjoyable game. It's a palate cleanser. You do need these kinds of games, but I thought it was a little pricey. Well, here's the good news. It's coming to Steam on June 6th, but even better than that is it's going to have a new lower price. $12.99 is going to be the new price for Paper Valley, and I think that is very appropriate. If Paper Valley was $12.99 to begin with, I would have been much more likely to give it a well recommend, to recommend it to general audiences. I would be, rather than just the 420 audience, So I would recommend it to general audiences at $12.99, where at $19.99, it's more of a focused thing. The other game I wanted to talk about is Archangel. You guys have heard me talk about Archangel forever. I'm one of the few people that think Archangel's single player campaign is freaking awesome. I loved Archangel. I loved the voice acting. I thought the voice acting was overdone, but freaking entertaining as hell. The explosions, all the special effects. Yeah, it was on rails, but I thought Skydance Interactive took incredible advantage of the fact that it was on rails to give you this explosive narrative experience that was happening along with you, the special effects, and it was like you were in a movie. I thought Archangel was awesome, but now they've added a multiplayer component. There's an open beta that has just kicked off. I believe it just kicked off today. It's called the Archangel Hellfire Update, and if you have Archangel on the HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift, it's completely free. Now, PlayStation VR, unfortunately, the Hellfire Update is not coming to PlayStation VR as far as I can tell, and that's really unfortunate because that's where I have Archangel. So I'm gonna have to either go buy Archangel or maybe reach out to Skydance Interactive and get a code to be able to try out this Hellfire Update. But who has tried this Hellfire Update is Upload VR's David Jagana. He has tried this and he's ranting and raving about it. There's an article on Upload VR about this Archangel Hellfire Update, and he is thumbs up, major thumbs up for this update. So anybody out there, if you have Archangel on the Vive or the Rift, you gotta try this update. And if you don't, if you have a Rift or a Vive and you've been thinking about Archangel, this might be exactly what you need to push you over the edge to go ahead and pick up the full game, because I think the single player is awesome as well. Don't skip out on that. Check that out as well. Now, the open beta only features 2 maps, 3 mech classes, light, medium, and heavy, and a single team deathmatch game mode, which features 2-on-2. But although that doesn't sound like a lot, Supposedly it is very, very good. So definitely check this out. I'm looking forward to trying this out myself, hopefully in the very near future. All right, guys, we had a crazy long show, but there was just a lot of good stuff to get into. And sometimes when you have a weekend wrap up and you only have so much time to work with, you're going to have a really long show if there's a lot of good, juicy info to work your way through. And that is the exact situation that we had today. But that's going to go ahead and do it. I will see everybody next weekend on the next VR wrap up. Until then, subscribe to the video, like the video, leave a comment, all that good stuff. I really appreciate all the support out there, everybody that has supported me along the way. Truly appreciate that. Remember to go ahead and bounce over to vrgamerankings.com, the website. Yeah, there's actually a website for this thing. I have recently updated all of the most wanted lists, top 20 most wanted Oculus Rift, top 20 most wanted HTC Vive, top 20 most wanted PlayStation VR, and they all have top 40s as well, most wanted, and then top 20 overall, top 50 most wanted overall. All of it has been updated. Check it out. See all the hot new games that are coming out. There's a lot of good stuff. I had to update it because there were so many new games that were popping out and so many games had already been released. I needed to update everything, was able to get through that. Definitely give that a quick look over if you've got the time. All right, that's going to go ahead and do it. I will see everybody next week. Take it easy. Later.